The business behind Kurzgesagt. I want to Kurzgesagt, and then after that, I'm going to play video games.
Insanely long, and it's on YouTube, and still a bit of a black box to people. So let's talk about ourselves a bit in 3 parts: our backstory, how we finance our work, and the values of Kurzgesagt. Let's jump back to a more innocent time. From humble beginnings to today. Kurzgesagt's foundation was laid when Philip, our founder, dropped out of high school as a teenager. Learning seemed daft and useless, and he wasn't interested in anything. Until a very special teacher at a school for dropouts grabbed him by the neck. The way she taught was different. She talked about connections and the big picture. She told a story. For the first time ever, Philip wanted to learn more without being forced. It was a key life experience. Kurzgesagt tries to recreate this experience for you. Nothing is boring if you tell a good story, and we try to tell these stories to spark excitement and make you want to go on and learn more.
Dude, this is like, I mean, it feels not even good as a defense. It's on your King Kong magazine cover will be releases Thursday. Bro, I don't even fucking know. You guys know more than I do about when my King Kong magazine cover is coming out.
Because of the one teacher that could do this, Philip got a high school degree, studied history and design, and eventually started Kurzgesagt as a passion project inspired by Crash Course World History. In 2012, YouTube was less commercial and more idealistic. You couldn't make a living with videos as involved as ours, and that was fine. The goal was creative freedom, and so for the first few years, it actually cost money to make Kurzgesagt. We had no outside funding, just intrinsic motivation and a few friends from university. We worked for clients during the day and on Kurzgesagt at night, 80 to 100 hours a week. It was a real struggle, but also very rewarding. But then Patreon launched, sponsorship started, our views increased, YouTube changed. In 2015, the channel began to break even and then to earn a profit. But we were pretty burned out at this point, so we decided to bring in more friends and hire the first team members full-time, creating a legal entity. More people meant that we could stop overworking, do more, and improve. But we also needed to earn more. The livelihood of real humans depended upon it. None of us had any experience in running a company. We didn't plan to become big or to grow, it sort of just happened. A decade later, Kurzgesagt is not a small project anymore. We are an animation studio with offices in Munich and Berlin. We need computers, monitors.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think they're well-intentioned liberals in Germany who have like that's it. They're well-intentioned liberals in Germany who cut a lot of videos, and some of which aligns almost completely with the opinions or pet projects that billionaires have, and that's it. It's literally manufacturing consent. But this time it's, again, still self-selecting, but this time on the internet through an independent, otherwise independent, like a source of information. Like, I don't think that these guys are like, oh, I disagree vehemently with this subject matter, but I think because a billionaire gave me money, I'm advocating for it. I think it's more so, I think it's more so just that, like, they personally, legitimately believe a lot of the things that they're advocating for. There's also a lot of stuff that they do that is completely unrelated to like billionaire pet projects that I love, especially the alien shit, you know what I mean? Yeah, they had these values. They had these values. They, of course, billionaires saw it, or some billionaires saw it and thought, "Oh, this is sick. These guys align with us." Didn't we already watch this, or deja vu lol? No. We watched a video critical of them, which I thought was a good video, a very good video. And I think those criticisms are valid. And I think the person who was critical of them when they made the billionaire propaganda by Kurzgesagt was right. They were covering it from they were covering it in the same vein that like Noam Chomsky has analyzed mainstream media with respect to how like journalists that get to the tippy top of mainstream media are self-selected. And I think that is identical to what's going on here, and I talked about it, and my opinion is not going to change with this video either. But I also don't think that it's like a grift or bad, even though I do sometimes disagree vehemently with some of the videos that they make. Does that make sense? They explain real scientific issues amazingly, but their solutions are always vote harder and hope science and technology will outpace those problems. Exactly. Their solutions are not great. But the assessment of the problems are. They're very good at breaking down issues. Ultimately, though, they're on the right side of history with respect to many issues that they cover, whether it be, renewable energy, shifting our focus away from fossil fuels, things of that nature. And for that reason, I think that they are a low-level offender, I guess. Like, they're a relatively inoffensive science channel. I don't like that you're giving them a pass by just saying that they're just libs. I'm not giving them a pass for anything. It doesn't fucking matter. They're just not doing anything like nefarious. There are a litany of content creators out there, from Jordan Peterson all the way to like every fucking right-wing content creator that straight up deny global warming.
Tablets, desks, coffee, contracts, pay licenses, taxes, rent, and insurance. In 2023, our team consists of over 60 employees and a lot of freelancers around the world. Salaries alone cost millions of dollars a year just to stay around. This creates an interesting problem. With such high production costs, how can we publish our work for free? How we finance Kurzgesagt. We've added up our earnings from 2015 through...
Let's come full circle and go back to that YouTuber who kicked off the clickbait controversy and point out that their argument was a straw man and they're a bad person for attempting to stigmatize the channel. No, I don't think that YouTuber who started off this clickbait controversy is a bad person. I think their analysis was literally correct. So no, I disagree with what you're saying as well. That was not a bad video. That was a good video. That was objectively true. And also, they were right. And that's it. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, they're right. This channel has gotten a lot of money from billionaires. This channel does agree with a lot of the opinions that certain billionaires have with respect to how to handle climate change, but from the liberal left side, not left, but like liberal side. Please, New Coscord, thank you for the 10 gift subs. Having said that, however, they still do a lot of good, and their solutions are neoliberal, but their analysis is still solid, leading up to what their solutions are.
Through 2022. Our sources of funding change depending on opportunities and the state of the world. Early on, agency work was our main source of income. Ad revenue varies. In some years, we got more sponsorships than in others. The shop didn't exist for a long time, then it became pretty big after we launched our calendar. 62% of our revenue comes indirectly or directly from you. You watch our videos with ads.
I mean, this is literally the fucking Reddit response, but in video form with like cute videos.
Support us on Patreon or buy from our shop. The single biggest source of income by far is our shop, that alone accounted for 40% over the last 8 years. The shop started small, but once we published our calendar for the first time in 2016, we realized it could really help us do more things, and we started producing more and more science products, from our posters to our gratitude journal or universe-scented candles. YouTube ads accounted for 13% and Patreon 9%. So without your support, we would cease to exist. Our shop and Patreon are our most important sources of revenue, and because we see ourselves as science communicators, we don't just do merch, but sciencey products that we spend hundreds of hours researching, discussing with experts, polishing up and working on directly with the manufacturers. They are part of the science story we try to tell. It also just feels good to get directly funded by you guys and give you something back for it on top of our videos. YouTube ads are a crucial part of our funding as well, but they are not within our control. Then there's paid agency work, which we stopped doing in 2022. It accounted for 9% of our revenue over the last 8 years. A lot in the beginning, not much by the end. Then there are commercials.
Like, you didn't even have to do all this. In my opinion, they didn't have to do this like level of like funding transparency, especially because like it still doesn't address the main fucking point of contention in that other video, which was that that like early on you got a lot of support and you also basically fucking advocate for similar things or believe in similar things genuinely that like Bill Gates believes in. And there are certain moments where like they talk about carbon pollution or advocate for like cap and trade, things of that nature.
Sponsors advertising products. They accounted for 12% of our revenue. We also got about 7% from German public broadcasting for the German channel, but ended this partnership in 2022.
So your point is that if you're a billionaire, you're
Finally,
objectively
there are
wrong? That's not what I
sponsors
said.
representing about 10%. Some people take issue with this, especially Bill Gates has come under public scrutiny, and we've been criticized for even working with organizations funded by him. So let's look at this 10% in more detail. About 3% of our revenue over the last 8 years came from the Gates organizations for a wide variety of topics, often suggested by us. 5% comes from open philanthropy and is only used for specific projects. With these funds, we've started Arabic, Hindi, Korean, Japanese, Portuguese, and French channels, bringing more free science content to more people. Then there's a 2-year funding for original TikTok content.
Is the lobbying money isn't 100%? Don't worry about it. The irrational anger towards Bill Gates is stupid. Look at the duality of chat. Bill Gates should be thrown in jail. The irrational hatred on Bill Gates is stupid. No, it's not. It's not stupid. No, Bill Gates deserves endless amounts of criticism that he does not receive or will never hear regardless. Okay? Bill Gates is not a good person. Bill Gates literally tried to fucking deal with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, he tried to do reputation washing for Jeffrey fucking Epstein. Okay? Bill Gates purposely blocked. We just watched earlier, before we get to Bill Gates purposely releasing the IP for AstraZeneca. Okay? Bill Gates purposely has eviscerated almost single-handedly public education funding in the United States of America with his little projects. Okay? Like, no, he's done a lot of fucked up shit. He's done a lot of fucked up shit. They just answered your point of contention, did they not? What?
Which gives us freedom to explore and learn how to do short-form science communication. The final 2% came from other organizations like the Red Cross or the UN, for example. We choose institutional sponsors carefully.
Red Cross is not a great...
organizations want to fund videos that help us spread quality information about topics, this is an easy yes for us, if we have the capacity for it. On top of that, the institutional sponsors we're working with align with our values. We have contracts with every grant giver or sponsor that bars them from editorial influence other than suggesting topic areas like global health or climate change. We agree on video topics together, but sponsors can neither influence details nor our conclusions. The final decision always remains with us. And usually we develop the topics of the videos autonomously and tell the sponsor what we're doing afterwards. If you're interested in how we research our videos in detail, our head of research wrote an article about it. Running an educational YouTube channel is a balancing act that we take very seriously. We're doing our best to maintain this balance, adjusting whenever necessary. As a team and a company, we want to grow to give more people access to a science-based outlet.
I'm confused. Are there any examples of videos that provide misleading info or just flat out false shit? I think that their videos are not like flat out false. Like I said, their videos are never like flat out false. I don't think. But there's a bit of skewed. There's cherry picked data in some instances. Sometimes they do. I mean, they advocate for, like, I'll just say it like this: there are better channels out there that talk about climate change and solutions to climate problems. That's it. Like, what I mean by that is like Climate Town is a great example of this, right? Climate Town is a great example of a channel that does a lot better. You are just mad. What? I don't even mind Kurzgesagt. I watch their videos. Like, I'm not. It's so strange. People always like have to be like. People always expect you to be like, yeah, fuck them, or like, I defend them till I die. Like, I'm not saying either of these things. I think they do a good job of breaking down complicated subject matter and describing it. Okay? That's it. People literally have issues. Everything feels like we'll never get anything done. Kind of frustrating. Everything has to be perfect. They're basically the John Oliver of science YouTube half-baked coverage, but for good. Yeah, ultimately. It's not their fault for having some values that align with like liberal, super wealthy liberal billionaires or whatever. You literally said trickle-down technology will help developing nations, so it's fine that we exploit them. Yeah, that shit was whack.
Fierce arguments between developing and developed countries about the fairness of reducing emissions while their populations were still poor. But in the last decade, we've seen that it is possible to increase prosperity without increasing emissions. Emissions in the Czech Republic dropped 13%, while their GDP grew by 27%. France reduced their CO2 emissions by 14%, while increasing GDP by 15%. Romania saw an 8% decrease and 35% growth. And even the largest economy on Earth, the USA, decreased emissions by 4% while growing their GDP by 26%. Some of you may call this a numbers trick.
Which it is. It is that. It's because you're like, this clip is about decoupling GDP from emissions. This is important. I mean, a big part of that is because, but like you're using the global south for a lot of your manufacturing and a lot of your industry.
Rich countries are just exporting emissions to poorer nations by moving the dirty parts of their economies like manufacturing. But even when we account for all of our imported goods, the numbers still look positive. It's no longer a matter of having to choose between prosperity and the climate, as it seemed to be a decade ago. Developing countries were to face.
Wait, hold on. I want to see the full clip.
Arguments between increased percent just exporting emissions to poorer nations by moving the dirty parts of their numbers still look positive. It's no longer a matter of having to choose between prosperity and the climate, as it seemed to be a decade ago. Developing countries will profit from that because as rich countries pay for the expensive development of green technologies, they can adopt them more cheaply.
Yeah. Developing nations shoulder the big burden of renewable energy initiatives, and then it will inevitably move down to developing nations. Developed nations will shoulder the burden of these, green capitalism initiatives, and it will inevitably trickle down to developing nations, and they will be able to adopt them cheaply. Okay, that's the argument, and it's a silly one, especially because you're simultaneously relegating some of the carbon pollution directly to these developing nations, while the developing nations itself are shouldering the worst burdens of climate change. They are the ones who are getting fucked over. Look no further than even Puerto Rico, for example. You know what I mean? When you have a crippled infrastructure as a consequence of centuries of exploitation, oppression, like African nations have, or even Puerto Rico. Okay? Great example. U.S. colony, Puerto Rico. Okay? Still technically not a state. When you are victim to some of the most predatory, exploitative practices under capitalism, and you have no infrastructure to deal with the climate changing so dramatically that extreme weather conditions become commonplace, you have nothing. Like you have no way of combating it even. You know what I mean?
They can skip most of the high emission phase that today's rich countries went through. We are at the point where not decarbonizing is a bad business decision.
What's the alternative? Developing nations will either splurge on technologies that will increase climate change, or we can help them through these means. I think completely moving away from fossil fuel and utilizing all of our resources, as it is an existential crisis on the entire planet, is exactly where we should be focusing all of our R&D and our dollars on. And then actually helping, not like conditional aid, not U.S. aid, but actually helping our trade partners. Capitalism is the main reason why this industrial development has been so sour on the entire planet. So trying to fix the issue that capitalism has greatly exacerbated through capitalist means is never going to happen. So making an argument that it will is wrong from my perspective. I mean, yeah, this is a great example. We export our literal garbage into the global south. We just dump our garbage. We put them on fucking ships and then just straight up dump our garbage directly in fucking countries that don't have any money, right? So they have nothing. They will gladly take it. It's kind of like everyone was like, dude, that's slavery, when XQC was talking about how to deal with like homelessness, where he was like, oh yeah, just make them work. Like just force them to work, right? And people were like, well, that's homelessness. But then it's like, but when it's done at a systemic level to the global south, you're like, because they're desperate and have no other means of economic development, then it's like seen as normal and good. You know what I mean? The very same. Well, XQC wasn't even directly saying that, for the record. It was a misunderstanding. But regardless, like that was Chat's analysis of that situation. Versus in this circumstance, when it's done again at the level of nations, making other nations work, it's like seen as good.
And we haven't even really talked about solutions like carbon capture. In 2000, it didn't really exist. In 2022, that technology does exist and costs around $600 to remove 1 ton of CO2 from the atmosphere. As investment pours in and the technology matures and begins to scale, it's likely that these costs will plummet over the next few decades. So everything's fine then? Well, let's not get carried away. All of these processes are great, but not nearly fast enough. We're still doing way too little and...
Like, here, one other example. Look at Chile, okay? Look at the Congo. If, as we move towards renewable resources and renewable energy, if we were actually engaging with nations like this in an honest way, then countries that have cobalt and lithium would be considered incredibly wealthy nations. Like they would be some of the wealthiest nations on the fucking planet. But we have not done that. We are not treating these countries as though they are viable trade partners that deserve sovereignty and dignity, but instead, a untapped plot of land that we can steal from with their own super cheap resource extraction labor force. Another banger from the same video. And for the record, this video, as far as I understand, is actually not sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or anything like that. This is just genuinely their perspective, right? And that's kind of what people were stating, is that like these guys do believe this stuff.
If current climate policies stagnate, we're likely to end up with warming of around 3 degrees Celsius by 2100, which is scary and tragic and far from acceptable. But this is actually good news. How? In the last decade, we've seen enough progress that most scientists now think that we have likely avoided apocalyptic climate change. Although substantial risk still remains, we can pretty confidently...
Wait, where? How? Who? Who are the scientists that are saying this?
...say that humanity isn't going anywhere. Civilization might have to change, but it will endure. Which begs the question...
Dude, come on. Okay, that is bad. That's really bad. Don't agree with that. Yeah, you're going to have to change. Mass displacement, mass migration, litany of fascist complications that arise as a consequence of, again, mass migration when your entire agricultural output is eviscerated as a consequence of climate change. Like, these shifts are not tiny. Some even say that the Syrian, the civil war in Syria was caused as a consequence of the agricultural development being halted in its entirety due to climate change. So much of the wars that we have engaged in, or so much of the wars that we're still experiencing, so much of the mass displacement will only continue to grow due to climate change. It's not like, oh, we're just going to have to adapt. Like, there's no like, oh, we're going to have to adapt. You can't say, oh, just adapt to, once again, Puerto Rico. 2,000 people fucking died in Hurricane Irma. They still have not recovered from it, and they keep getting hit by new hurricanes, right? How do you adapt to that? You know what I mean? That's like what are you supposed to evolve to just have gills? Like, what do you do? And again, uneven development and unequal trade also yields uneven results for national development in general for these countries that are otherwise exploited. So when you don't have the infrastructure to deal with it, or when you don't have the money to overcome when you don't have the money to like basically take advantage of the recover evenly, you're double fucked. Here's the thing with climate action right now. We know that for people to change, they need to be worried a lot, but not so much that they will freeze with inaction, and oil companies are banking on inaction to the point that they have encouraged this can't-do feeling. So climate activists need to tread a careful line to stop people from being too doomer. It's hard. No, but like, how does that have to do anything with what this is saying? This is like looking at an objectively devastating reality for the third world and trying to paint it over with like rose-colored glasses. And that's not true. It's just like completely untrue. Like, we joke about it even internally with like Ben Shapiro, where we say like, adapt how? Sell your house to who? Fucking Aquaman, right? Like, okay, what are the people that are supposed to do when they live in fucking countries that are being absolutely devastated? Like people in Pakistan. Like who are they going to sell their house under the river to when they died? They can't even sell it because they died in the flood. You know what I mean? What are they going to do?
Most scientists now endure. Which begs the question, what has changed over the last 10 years? And is this really good news? The invisible will come to pass.
Anyway, I don't want to watch the rest of this video. I agree with all your points, but what Kurzgesagt was trying to say is to promote an optimistic message. I don't agree with it, though. I think you're being a bit uncharitable here. I don't think he's saying everyone is going to be okay, but he's saying that the human race will survive. Yeah, no shit. I know the human race will survive. Okay. Guys, this is an extreme example, but it's literally like saying, dude, if there was a race war in America, things would be fine. People would still survive. Yeah, who would survive? You know what I mean? Yeah, of course, anthropogenic climate change is going to be devastating for the planet, but people will survive. The people that will survive are the people that are living in, you know, the imperial core. They will survive. Even then, though, conditions will be still worse than before, especially for the working poor in our country as well. This is like, ultimately, this is the unfortunate, unimaginable, or not unimaginable, sorry. This is a problem with the lack of creativity and a lack of imagination that comes from believing in a capitalist dogma. If you are a firm believer in capitalism as a liberal, no matter how well-intentioned you are, your solutions are still going to be trapped within that narrowly defined confines of capitalism, what is acceptable and appropriate within capitalism. And ultimately, in a long enough timeline, as a mechanism of control, as the contradictions become more and more glaringly obvious, we'll start advocating for more devastating, more damaging solutions. As you slowly but surely normalize the oppression that people feel, normalize the violence that people experience under capitalism. Things that you would consider to be, things that our parents would look to and think are unimaginable, maybe 40, 50, 60 years ago, are now seen as like totally normal. Look no further than mass shootings in the United States of America if you want to develop a better understanding of how much we have dulled ourselves and desensitized ourselves to the rampant violence that we experience on a daily basis. Now, it's not like we have a lot of sympathy for the global south anyway. So this kind of commentary is one that I specifically disagree with. My friends and grandparents swear we've always had daily shootings. What? Anyway, let's finish this video and then I'll play a video game.
This brings us to our final topic. Why are we doing Kurzgesagt? Our values and our vision. Our core mission is to spark curiosity. We want to make science and humanism accessible for as many people as possible. The effort we put into creating our videos is a way of achieving that. Our videos are beautiful because that helps to spark curiosity, to understand complex topics, and because it just feels good to create and watch. Our research is as intensive as it is, so our videos are a good simplification of very complicated topics. We want to make people excited about science so they rediscover subjects they hated in school and see how amazing they are. On top of curiosity, we want to inspire long-term thinking and a positive, constructive outlook. Being optimistic about the future of humanity is not mainstream, and we think this is horrible. Pessimism often sounds smart and gets more views, while optimism can sound naive. But this is a bias that's not helpful for us as a species. So, despite the gloominess of many topics, we want to approach them with informed and well-researched optimism. Not brushing humanity's very real challenges aside, but also not falling into the trap of pessimism. We want to inspire you to dream a little about the glorious future.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have an issue with like purposely instilling optimism in people when talking about shitty subjects. I do it all the fucking time. I try to do it at least. Climate change is a very difficult subject matter to cover in that regard. I think, again, I can't believe I'm hyping this up one more fucking time. I'm dick riding these dudes a lot, but Climate Tout does a pretty decent job at that. Okay? Obviously, you can be happy about like marginal improvements that are happening all around in some respects, or at least like moving in the right direction in some respects. But I think like leaving a lot to science will handle it is unironically what right-wingers say all the fucking time. Like I've literally heard Jordan Peterson say this, and Jordan Peterson is an oil lobbyist, okay? So remember that when you hear people, be a little bit more cautious when you hear from people that say, oh, technology will fucking fix this issue in the future, right? Or when you say things like, yeah, climate change will be devastating in some respects, but you know, we have an incredible capacity to adapt and overcome. Yeah, but like humanity will survive. Humanity could survive nuclear holocaust. That doesn't mean humanity is still the same humanity that you enjoy. It's like an econ textbook refusing to recognize the humanity behind the laborers at the widget factory. Yeah, when you think about it as just like they're just producing widgets at the widget factory, then that's fine. But when you but you can't do that. Yeah, I mean that's like a kind of a good take too. It's like I can smoke cigarettes. They will have a cure for cancer by the time I get it. Wait, are you actually serious? Is Jordan Peterson actually an oil lobbyist? Yes, he's being funded by the oil lobby.
That we could actually build, but only if we believe it's possible. In the long run, we don't only want to do this on YouTube. The idea is for Kurzgesagt to be a positive influence across more media. On our TikTok channel, in the long-form content we're exploring, in apps, in the VR game that will be released later this year, and the games we plan to make in the future. Our shop is a central part of this vision. We start our stories with a video and end them with a poster. There are so many things we want to do, and thanks to you watching this right now, we have the freedom to work to the best of our knowledge and ability. In the end, we hope you like what we offer and that we'll be doing something worthwhile for as long as we exist. And hopefully, we'll have a lasting impact by making science and learning more fun for as many people as possible. If you personally want to help us do this, you can watch and share our videos, check out our shop, become a Patreon, or give us an ad blocker exception.
Bro, this is kind of funny to pair with this. The new IPCC report out today with more terrible news that we are headed for climate hell unless immediate transformative change happens. Like, yeah, when you pair up with like IPCC reports, they keep coming out that we're like, we brought every scientist, okay? We brought every climate scientist together in a room and they said we're all going to fucking die. We're going to die in a fiery inferno. Obviously, the nations that are going to go first are the ones that are the poorest because they do not have the capacity or the development to withstand dramatic shifts in overall climate and the horrifying consequences of said dramatic shifts, like extreme weather conditions becoming more and more commonplace. Everyone's going to fucking die gradually, okay? Please, we must do something. We must do something, anything to change that. Like, literally, we are so fucking cooked, please. And then you turn around and it's like, yeah, we have carbon capture technology in the future. We'll be able to, we'll actually become viable. And it's just like, you're in some ways that turns into, in some ways, that basically almost, I mean, this is like a little bit rude to say, but in some ways that kind of turns into the same shit that Republicans are doing. But like in a more even-keeled and smarter way almost. It's like Joe Biden saying, we got to trust the science. We trust the science, unlike those Republicans, Jack, because that's what liberals say, right? And then basically doing like very little about it. You know what I mean?